Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and guide along the way. And we are embarking on yet another trip down this exploration of showmanship and play. We're going to have a quick little synopsis of what we did last time, just to cue ourselves up, set ourselves up for getting the most out of today's episode. But before we do so, I would just like to ask you to click subscribe to this podcast. It'd be totally and absolutely awesome for me if you subscribe to the podcast, so when the episode drops, the episode will be loaded into your player of choice. You can do that so it's streaming so that it doesn't clog up your phone, but you will get it there, and with an easy click you can click on it on whatever player that you have. If you do that, it'd make me very happy. So, what did we talk about last time? Well, we talked about a bunch of things, but the key thing that we ended up on was we tried to unpack a little bit of these 5 criterias of play. We only got to the first 3, and we started by talking a little bit about who it is that plays. And as we all know, but we need to mention it before we can go on, the people or the kind of beings that play are the young ones, the younglings, the children, the pups. These are the ones who play. And we're not going to go into all the details of why, but after having spoken about that and why that might be, we then spoke, what is it that gets the kids to play? Well, it's because it's fun. And this is the first of the criterias. And we looked into it a bit more, like, why is something fun? Why is something enjoyable? Why does it feel good to do certain things? Well, if we look at it from just, in the synopsis anyway, from a purely evolutionary point of view, if something is important for you as a species, for you as a being, for you to stay alive, then that thing will be, most of the time, it will be enjoyable. So, it's a rough guide, but if something is important for life, then chances are it's going to be fun. And that's the first criteria of play. So I think that's a good place to start and good for the synopsis. But the second criteria is that things, play, seems purposeless. And why does it seem purposeless? One big reason why it seems purposeless is that it doesn't seem to have any immediate purpose beyond, as C criteria 1, because it's fun. So we see how that's these things are just so connected that it's hard to pick it apart. But why is it that we do it? Just because it's fun? But when we assign something value, then it's because it's supposed to do something more important. What is important are things that comes from the domain of, in quotation, things that you have to do, things that are important for evolution or for work or for whatever. It's like getting food, staying safe, having sex, surviving in general. All these things. If it doesn't have to do with those things, maybe it's probably just not important. So we're going to get back into the huge flaws with that kind of thinking, but that's why criteria 2 talks about it being apparently purposeless. We talked about many more things, but it's also like part of one of the things that we talked about is how play sets you up for something in the future. Not by being aware of that now, but you're preparing yourself for the future and getting benefits in the future by having just fun in the moment now, and that's an important value that we're going to get back to. And the third thing is about self-motivation. And this one, I think, is one of the main, it's dangerous. We've stolen most of the time from our children now by putting them in schools and putting them in after-school care and stuff that's guided by adults, or that we put them in to play a sport where it's important to win and all these things. So we're stealing their time, and in that time we are taking away something that's quite subtle and really important, and that is to find out who you are. Because I think we're all born lost. Well, we're all born not even caring who we are. We don't know how to sit. We don't know which kind of gender or who we are going to be. We don't even know who we are in that very moment. We don't even know what is part of us and what's part of the world. So from there, we all have to find our own way in the world. And how do we find that? Well, we find it by, the short way to say is that we find it by being guided by our heart, using our heart as a compass on our way. With that, you can never go astray, as the poet, yours truly, wrote in a song one time. And I think that's like it's. But the thing about it is that the compass of the heart, which we have in us, speaking pictorially here, that has has a bit of radium dabbed on the end of those little arms, but that it is not very much. It's so little that you can only see it when it's very dark or whatever. So we can't find it, and or can't see it so well, or you can see it as a quiet whisper, and we don't learn so much. And it's not so easy to learn what it is that we like. If someone's always around you saying, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, do this. If you do the other one, then you'll be punished and have to do the class one more time or whatever. Then you get, as we spoke about last time, you get good at following the wishes and desires of others. So let's leaving that there. And what we take from the children is the ability to read their own compass, to find out their own inclinations, their own desires, and their own way. They might be lost, but they'll find their way if they learn to listen to themselves. And that's not so easy in a world that's screaming and flashing and beeping and collars and everything everywhere. So, with that said, there are 2 criteria left to unpack before we move on. So, let's get right to it. All right, so we're back here, and last time I did get confused. I confused, but the confusion was all in my mind. It was all in my mind when I recorded, and I only realized when I recorded the whole thing that the criteria, I am taking them in the right order. But somehow, as I was telling you about it, I somehow lost track of what the order of the criteria are. So I'm apologizing for that. But we are now up to criteria 4, and this is about play and rules. And so the 4th criteria, play criteria, is about play and how it needs rules, or the need for rules in play. And this is perhaps something which might strike you as a little odd. Isn't free play, that I've spoken so much about, isn't free play completely free? Well, in a sense, it is. Yet here one must remember that rules are not just something which restricts players. The restriction of the players into behaving in a certain way, it is this which actually creates the game. It's what creates the different games. And the different rules, for instance, in handball and soccer, is what distinguishes the games. The games exist as things in themselves, as, well, it's not even a thing, but it's processes, as relational activities, and they exist because the rules are different. That's why soccer is soccer, or football, as we call it in Europe. It is called football because it has a rule that says you can only use your feet to move the ball, or your head, to maybe a little bit of other stuff, but let's just keep this real. Let's call it football. Why is it called football? You can only use your feet. And the only other example that I used, handball, well, handball is in a certain sense the exact opposite then, or complementary sport. Since handball has a rule, or as one of the major rules, that you can't use your feet to kick the ball, only your hands. In both those sports, we have the trickster character. That's the keeper, the one that stands, the goalie, the one that stands in the goal in soccer. Because the trickster keeper, the goalie, he can actually grab the ball with his hands, even though he's playing soccer, and he can kick it. And the handball goalie, they can also use their feet to stop the ball from going into the goal. I don't think they can actually kick it out. But anyway, there's a certain particular kind of loneliness to the goalkeeper, which is always interesting, I guess. But anyway, let's not get too bogged down into that. But the rules or the constraints, the fact that you can only use your hands, the fact that you can only use your legs, this is what actually makes the games. It makes the sport. And constraints creates actuals out of possibles. Like, anything could be possible at any given time. But if you don't actually restrict yourself to taking a certain amount of choices, then it just remains possible. Everything is always possible. I could study this, I could do that, I could go out and kick the neighbor's dog. I could do many things, but I won't do them. Only when they become actual does it actually become real. And there's a whole lot more possible things than there are actual things. Andre Bergson talks about this, and it's a wonderful kind of concept. But what constraints do in this case, or in any case, they aren't negative. It's the constraints that makes these different sports then come into being. Like in an undifferentiated world with no restrictions, no guidelines, no nothing, then anything would be possible. Yet, this is not a state that has ever actually existed in this world, because there are restrictions everywhere. From time and space and gravity, there are already restrictions. The world, life, humans, the things we create and the activities that we engage in, they're shaped by these things. Like things like time and gravity is of course so fundamental that we don't even think of them as restrictions. But it's a kind of restriction that I can't fly. If we lived on the moon, which we might do one day as people, then our gravity would be different and it would afford different things. It wouldn't be restrictive in the same way that maybe there would be other cool, incredible games that we still haven't thought of that could be played in this I was going to say anti-gravity, but it's not quite anti-gravity on the moon. It's just a little bit less of it because there's less of the moon, so there's less gravity. But be that as it may. But I mention gravity and time to point out that the restrictions to the world, or the restrictions that exists, they go all the way down to the very fundamentals, and they're part of what makes the world the way it is. From gravity to our particular desires, or our social intelligence, and what stands between us creating a new act and not creating it, like it all comes down to restrictions. It's all possible for me to make any kind of act, but as long as I just go around thinking I'm going to make the greatest act, well, what's it going to be? Well, I don't know. As long as it's the greatest, you don't really get much stuff done. You have to make some restrictions. Well, it's going to have something to do with this magic move that I have just spent a lot of time learning, or whatever. Then that's a kind of restriction, but it is also what's about to making something that's possible, make it into an actual thing. So in this light, we see that restrictions are creative catalysts. They make things happen, and they make things real. So we might know about them, the restrictions, or we might discover the restrictions later, but they are part of every action that we do, and it is not necessarily a negative thing. In free imaginative play, where children try on and act as different characters, it is the rules established between the players as to who they are, like a mom or a cat or a policeman, that determines and frames their behaviors. The mom must have some kind of momness, but it can be greatly distorted along the way. I mean, she could be the mom, but who knows what the game actually going to be. Yet there's something relational here that's set up that the children sort of grab onto. They don't grab onto it, have it pinned down like a butterfly. They hold it loosely. They hold the concept lightly and are ready to jump and to change any time along the way if somebody changes it in a fun way. So the rules can change at any time. Like I mentioned that like a policeman. Somebody could be a policeman or a cat or a mum, and the policeman can turn out to be a rock star at night, and the mum can be a wolf sometimes, and the cat might be the one who decides when it changes from nighttime to daytime and back. So it's all just possible as long as the participants agree. For the game to flourish and for it to work at all and for it to exist, the rules of the game must be arrived at through cooperation. This is a free play, of course, because it is a little bit different when you're having a game of football, and there it's kind of like there's a possibility for a more kind of objective brilliance or an objective act of genius or whatever when somebody is, manages to grab the ball and run back and then go around, dribble as it's called in Norwegian, but like tricks and hop and jump and kick and in all the best possible ways, and they do something which is just absolutely mind-boggling. Part of why it is mind-boggling is that you can always, the rules and the game, and when the person exhibits does something which you think that shouldn't be possible, because you know what the game is, and okay, there's three people coming at him there, and there's the people on the side, and it's all coming at him, and all of a sudden this guy kicks the ball up and backwards and sideways and up and down and I don't know what, and gets past, and then in the most fancy way kicks it over the goalkeeper and into the goal. When that happens, you can get this ecstatic excitement from the entire, sometimes it's tens of thousands of people who just stand up and just go absolutely bananas, because they saw that what this person did was like right on the edge of what should have been possible, and you might not even have thought it possible, and so they got to be brilliant within it. Whilst the games that we're talking about now are the games that are imaginative, and there it doesn't have that same kind of, because the rules aren't so rigid, you don't have the same kind of you don't have there, so it's not as restrictive. So what am I trying to say here is that as they play it, you don't have that same kind of ecstatic going, oh my god, what a cool move, okay, you decided that it was nighttime, but the policeman could only be a rock star at night, and you did it, and then it's like, I couldn't believe it, that was amazing when you did that move in the play or whatever. You don't have that same kind of thing, and that is like it's the object of that game when you're doing it imaginatively is just, it has a different nature and a different goal, and the playing with the rules, which I think is happening in these imaginative games. It's not you're not playing within the rules, you're actually playing with the actual rules and being inside it. I mean, you're not just playing with the rules, but that's an aspect of it anyway. So, because it has to do with, like, if someone in a game, like an imaginative game with a rockstar cop and a mum that can be a wolf, if somebody in there repeatedly breaks the rules or changes the rules too often without their playmates being into it, then this can destabilize and actually make the whole game collapse. Since games are such fun, they're self-motivated and richly rewarding, then the kind of reward that you get from the game sort of gets richer and richer as they go on. It's like they age, a game aged like wine. The longer it goes, or like a good whiskey, that it's like a 15-year-old whiskey has all these extra flavors and all this extra value and fun, and well, maybe the whiskey doesn't have any fun in it, but anyway, a game does not age like milk, it ages like wine. So because as imaginations and time is invested in the game's value, or it grows, and the value of fun is the value of fun and enjoyment of the game, and the interconnectedness of the negotiations and the discoveries that happens along the way when you are playing. So a game is a unique set of restrictions. each game is that. And they each allow something new to come into being. If the game stops, then you won't know what you missed. Any moment in a game, in an imaginative game like that, is a kind of cliffhanger. So each kid has skin in the game. They care about the game and they don't want it to end. So that's, we spoke about that in Criteria 1 too. That is part of Criteria 1. That's like, it's so fun and it's so enjoyable. And when something is fun and enjoyable, we just don't want it to end. So that's that thing with having skin in the game, which is something that I've heard recently on a few people talking about artificial intelligence and how that doesn't have skin in the game. I think it's John Vervaeke who's making this argument that artificial intelligence, it doesn't actually care. It doesn't have these real body ideas of, or it doesn't have the embodied version of itself where it cares one way or another, whilst we do. So having skin in the game is really important here for valuing it, and for the game to continue and for it to grow and for it to be what it is. So anyway, that was a unbaked idea that just popped in there. But games have then a certain fragility, and it takes a great deal of sensitivity to navigate the game with someone. If one person in the game refuses to play by the rules or is a bully, the others will notice. And if it continues, the insensitive kid might not be invited next time. Maybe none of them are going to stand up and tell them to leave, but people will know this, and then this person will be, this person's not so fun to play with. Because everyone in the game are equals, but that doesn't mean that everyone is treated the same way. If the bully doesn't take into account whether he is wrestling someone's little brother or is wrestling like a 9th grader who's the biggest in his class, then if they don't know how to tell this different and they don't play accordingly to the needs of the people they're playing with, then they are not fun to play with. Hence, this kid, bully or whatever, might not be invited next time. Next time wrestling is on the agenda. And let's face it, when you're a kid, particularly if there's boys involved, wrestling is always on the cusp between the possible and the actual. It's like wrestling could just spontaneously happen. So to be sure, to be sure that no one gets brutalized, just in case there's a wrestle that emerges or becomes actual, then it's best not to invite a bully, just in case. So all of this just highlights the distinct kind of equality which permeates free play, which is not that everyone is to be treated the same. And this is a really important distinction between what equality means. It's not it's not that everybody gets treated exactly the same. It's that everybody's needs gets taken into account. Because the thing which is the same is that each individual should be treated in a way which takes their unique and specific wishes and requirements into account. And what emerges could be described as a kind of ethical individualism, I think. Like, it's about ethics, but it's taking the individuals always into account. Like, the game is here and you're going like, this kid is like that. And sometimes it might just be that this kid doesn't want to do this or doesn't want to do that, and the other kids, if they know them, then they will allow this kid to be like that. Maybe they have trouble focusing, maybe this kid doesn't know how to read, maybe whatever that thing is gets included in the game. And if they play that everybody knows how to read, and that's important, then everybody plays that they know how to read. But no one is pulling this kid up on the fact that they don't know how to read or whatever. It's maybe not the best example, but the point is that each wrestling match, for it to be equal in this kind of way that we see in this ethical individualism, or the kind of the way that games, the equality of games, is that each wrestling match that gets adjusted so that each participant is challenged to the limits of their capabilities, but not further. Maybe it's pushed further a little bit there, sometimes it's a bit below, but the fact that you get up to and you become aware of people's boundaries within the game. Like they will say no. You can tell by their whole being. Like I can tell by my dog that he's happy, even though he doesn't tell me, because of the way that he behaves. And you can see it in a human being. You can see it in their face as you're talking and you're suggesting some sort of a new direction for the game or whatever. Then you can already tell that no, this is not going to be. And a good game player, the kid that always gets invited to play, no matter who is playing what games, that's the kid who knows how to read the others, knows how to tickle the fancy of each little one, makes this person laugh, makes this person feel good, and that person in there. If that's not ringing the little bell of showmanship here in the metaphor, then I don't know. So each participant of the game is challenged to the limits of their capabilities, but not further. And if it accidentally slips beyond the point of play, say the stronger one uses their strength without taking a younger kid's size into account, the game will halt. Game time stops. Real time, or like real life time, starts up again as the situation is mediated. Just like we talked about a few episodes ago, how my dog Teddy abruptly stops if he thinks he has bitten too hard in our game in the forest. If we're playing and I'm pushing and my fingers are icy cold and he bites me and I pull my hand away or whatever, he will immediately stop and come over and lick and everything, and I will pet him and he goes, it was a mistake, game on, back on again, and the growling starts. So if the players, really see each other, see eye to eye, and a big kid says, oh, sorry there, I stepped over the bounds, and if the kids know that it was a mistake, then tears are wiped and the game can immediately resume. So a quick glance, just a few seconds pause might be all that's needed. Or sometimes the game stops completely and a mediation session starts. In this moment, not only the current game, but the transgressor's future as a desirable playmate is up in the air. To play or not to play, that is the life and death question of childhood. And, I believe, for any time in life. So, as it turns out, one of the most important things in playing is to be allowed to stay in the game and be called upon next time it's time to play. And this is just like, I'm then talking all about, this is all about this, the fluidity of rules here, and about finding out those things, because if you want to stay in the game and called upon the next time, you need to be a good player. And the real winner of a game is the one who always are invited into every game due to them being good players. Like if you're a fun girl or a fun guy, whatever, a man or a woman or whoever you are, and you like the fact that people call you when they want stuff to happen, that is just, then you've won in life. It's about relationships. And so anyway, this means that to be a good player, whatever the game, you have to be, whatever the game is, you have to be able to live yourself into the perspective of others. You have to see each other as unique individuals, and you have to meet each other on each other's terms. So, and this is not easy, and this is something that we explore in every game. There will be rules, and there will be mediation of the rules, and there will be change, and there will be fluidity, and there will be flow, and all this. And flow is broken. If the rules are broken, then the game stops, might completely disappear, not be started again. So during each and every game, this skill is practiced and honed. Like we learn about rules, and we learn about, and not rules that are written down like definitions in a book of law where it says this and this and this and thou shalt this and that. It's like it becomes an organic, networking, fluid, flowing thing. So yeah, and not just written down and going, well, this is the role here, because the accountant is the difference again. Werner Herzog's idea of the accountant's truth, where the greatest book that ever was written was the telephone directory, where Each number actually belonged to the person, and you could tell, but the ecstatic truth is much more exciting. And so anyway, I'm rambling a little bit today, getting a bit excited. Maybe I've had too much coffee. But anyway, so yeah, we honed the skill of fun and playing with the rules in an ecstatic kind of way rather than an accountant's way and just following this, that, and the other. So, and that's what happens in here. And it's like, because a big part of it then, any game, is keeping your playmates happy. Making them feel just the right blend of challenge and mastery is far more important than winning. For some people, this is very hard, and for others, it just comes natural. And for those of us who carry the spark of showmanship in our hearts, this skill is supremely important. We need to be tuned in to what's going on with our audiences. Why are we doing what we do? If we might just create our art in the dark and do it and not care about what they do, but since showmanship so often is on the spectrum of entertainment, we do want the audience to enjoy themselves. So we're always tailoring it with that in mind. We're always tailoring it. Is our messages, is our ideas, is the excitement, is the fun coming across and being felt by our audience? If so, that's great. And in that, then we are keeping our playmates happy. We're making them feel just the right blend of challenge and fun. Like I'm saying, I'm going to twist my arm around twice here now. And then they go, I don't want to see that. But then they see it and they go, I'm glad you showed me that because you pushed me a little bit. All right. And all of this that I've talked about now, and I actually mentioned it briefly earlier as well because it was sort of hinted at so strongly, and I mentioned James Carse, so I thought that I could talk a little bit about these different kinds of games. And this is games, when we're thinking of it in a very expanded way, not just as football or whatever, but that any kind of interaction could be seen as a game. And it's like in Nala's book, The Clown Manifesto, he talks about that as soon as a clown enters the stage, as soon as a performer, as soon as a showman walks out onto the market square, walks out onto a stage, and the audience is there, you are looking for the game. What's the game? I have some stuff that I'm going to show you, but what's the game? What's happening right here now? Where's it at? What's happening? Being there in that moment. So this is the kind of way that... But I think game theory is kind of a little bit in this, but we're not going to talk about that. But it's treating any kind of interaction as a kind of game. It's a game where we're looking for the rules, or maybe a game that there are rules, and the fact that you step outside of those rules, it's like you come on stage and you say something inappropriate. You come onto the stage and then you go, sorry, I just have to brush my teeth before I go on, and then you actually brush your teeth. Then that's like inappropriate at that point, and you just set up this game, like you've broken some rules, and it's like, yeah, that if you look at that as a game, then you go, he just broke the rules. So let's get into this idea of finite and infinite games. James Carse wrote this excellent book, interesting, and that opens up with this sentence. When we play, there are at least two kinds of games. One could be called finite, the other infinite. When we play, there are at least two kinds of games. One could be called finite and the other infinite. A finite game is played for the purpose of winning. A finite game is played for the purpose of winning, whilst an infinite game is played for the purpose of continuing the play. Infinite games are played with the purpose of continuing the play. And so begins James Carse's book, Finite and Infinite Games, from 1986. And this is a brilliant way, I think, to express the nature of games. And I would say that free, child-led play has a very strong tendency towards infinite games. Any group of children who regularly come into contact, whether they go to the same school, live in the same neighborhood, or any other reason, will in a sense be involved in an infinite game. Each day might have a finite game, but life is an infinite game. It is important to have fun in each game, in each football match or character-based play in the forest, but more important than winning the individual game is that you're invited to play again the next time, to find out that everyone has gone into the woods to play again and that you weren't invited. It's one of the worst punishments a human being can get. To be excluded really hurts. So that book, though, it's kind of built up like almost like aphorisms. It's just so like verses, and then this is like one verse. When we play and continuing to play what I just read, when we play there are at least two kinds of games, and then it just goes on with these little stanzas. So it can be very, for those people of you who do kind of contemplative reading, where you have a short text or a little sentence or a little thing that you set off 5 minutes of your day or whatever to, you read it and then you explore that idea imaginatively and see where it leads. Like it could be from a poem or whatever, but this book is excellent for that. It's always kind of metaphorical. It talks about the game, but the game is so open that you can apply it specifically to your own ideas of showmanship or whatever it is that you're thinking about, or raising a child or whatever it is that you do. Learn how to survive in nature with nothing but 6 sticks and a banana. Common things like that people get excited by. So anyway, to be excluded hurts. It really does. So I would recommend that and have a look at that book if you like good and interesting books. Because it's not just, it's a little bit like almost like the I Ching or whatever. Different chapters talk about different things, and it's really one to get your mind spinning, which mine is obviously doing now. And the spinning mind and the going in every which so direction, that leads us perfectly into the fifth and final criteria of play. And as I mentioned in a couple of episodes ago, when you read different books about play, then you might find that different experts and different scholars and academics and play interested people might have different criteria, and by you connect them together, almost like when I spoke about how me and Nala each had a triangle, and but what we exactly put in that triangle is slightly different. So these different criteria aren't nailed in stone or anything like that, if anyone can actually say that. But these are 5 criteria, and this criteria here now, so full of when my mind is racing, is about imagination and the relationship between play and imagination. So the fifth and final of our play characteristics is that play is imaginative and improvisational. And this seems quite intuitive to me, unlike the rules where you have to think about it a little bit. But for social games of the sort of let's pretend we're superheroes or pirates or family variety, imagination is the axle upon which everything revolves. The rules of the game are imagined through a negotiated collective imagination. In part, the pirates behave like pirates do, but any and all pirate behavior can be modified. There might be no killing, only treasure hunting, or the pirates might decide that they shall also be mountaineers and then climb the world's most dangerous mountain using only hook hands, peg legs, and cutlasses as equipment. The games, with all its relationships in the ship hierarchy of captain, deck boys, and navigator girls, can be fluid as long as all involved agrees about the collective leaps of imagination. So in this constant possibility of game-changing imaginative left turns, it seems self-evident that what happens in the game is improvised. Play is improvised in the same way that life is improvised. Each conversation we have must be congruent with who we are in relation to the person that we're talking to, and the responses to each person's input flows back and forth based on that particular conversation's reality. Each of the talkers have the freedom to say and do whatever seems right in the moment. If either of them gets the sense that the other person isn't really listening, that will eventually kill the conversation. In politics or many other situations, a meeting might take the outward appearance of a conversation, whilst in reality the two sides might only ever be interested in stating their case, regardless of what the other side might be saying. In such a case, we're not dealing with a real conversation. We're not dealing with real improvisation. Not in that mutual kind of way that would happen. I'm using the word conversation here because a conversation, there is an aspect of imagination. There is an aspect of improvisation, but it's improvising reciprocally with another person, which of course is the stuff we talk about in when we that leads us to play. So much in the same way, like if some kids decide to play Star Wars, as I did, and one kid pushes really hard for everyone to actually play out what happened in the original 1977 film, constantly telling the others that they're playing it wrong, and the others will ditch the wannabe director. A real Star Wars game has the characters play out situations which are unfolding improvisational relations in the moment of the play. Free play does not rehash the lines from a film or a movie. It sweeps the participants away on a wave of discovery as the game progresses. So, improvising by saying and acting out what feels right in the context of the game whilst fitting yourself in with all the other players is a big part of what makes play so enjoyable. The feeling that the game can turn at any point, but that you'll be able to handle it, gives a wonderful feeling of mastery of one's own life. We improvise, and if we get a crazy idea, and then we got to negotiate with the others to include it. We got to sell it to them. Like, if my daughter, in the midst of playing a game with soft little mice, rummages through a toy box and stumbles across a forgotten toy from her dad's childhood, a beat-up, scruffy-looking dog, which she wants then, for whatever reason, wants it to conclude it in the game, although its size, like it's the size kind of a real-life Cocker Spaniel, so much larger than the mice, which are kind of mice-sized, then she'll have to sell the idea of this to the others. Why is there suddenly a dog 12 times their size involved? Its size will inject something completely different into the game, and although Saskia might think it is exciting, it could disturb the other players in the game and potentially ruin the game. Saskia's task now is to improvise, is to convince the others not only that it'll be okay to include the dog, but that it will make the game even better, more fun for everyone. Then she has to improvise a fun and imaginative way, an enticing proposition that will make the others allow the rules of the game to be changed to include the big old dog, Old Faithful. It's actually called Faithful, Trofast. It's a real dog we're talking about here. I'm not just making this shit up. So the rules and what happens in the game can change constantly as long as the players agree, as long as they think it's fun. And watching kids navigate this is at least as serious and delicate as any UN negotiation. Any negotiation. So much is at stake. What if someone refuses even to continue the negotiation and then refuses to playing and ruining the whole game? Like, maybe as you introduced this kid that wasn't quite happy with the game in the first place, maybe you haven't read the situation right. You're totally into it, and then this other kid is already on the way out of the game. Boom, that was the catalyst. Now the whole game is done, and it's your fault. So there's always real risk. Each player has skin in the game, as we said. They can push past it, and they can push to get their will, but only so far. You really have to entice and use your improvisational and imaginative skills to sell it and to get the people on board with your ideas. And also just to get them on board with their other ideas. Maybe the kid that was pulling out was rather wanted to read a comic that they'd found, and if you're just right enough, then this dog was a dog that was there in the library, maybe, where that kid had just borrowed a comic, and I don't know, making this stuff up. But if I was there, I reckon I'd come up with some pretty good ideas of how that dog could be involved with the kid that read the comic book, and boom, then maybe you have them back in again in the game. So improvisation is to me the little touch that's yours alone. It's how you participate in whatever it is that you're doing. It's the lilt in your step, or how the musician dances within the rhythm of a song, or indeed how we all can get the feeling that we're dancing to the tune of life, our own life, when we hit a flow in our day-to-day existence. The constant improvisation and negotiation, always keeping the other players in mind, is direct practice and deep learning of how to function in any social setting that you'll ever get into in life. And of course, that little bell is ringing again. I should have a little bell here. And actually I did have some bells here, but I don't know if I'm going to ring them again like that. But this is also what we do as show folk, like play and showmanship. It two shoes made from the same. Oh no, I was thinking of this lest. It's called. What is it called? There's a tool that kind of looks a little bit like an upside down shoe. It's a metal thing, and you put the shoe on top of it. And I don't know what that's called in English. But anyway, it's two sticks from the same log. This is some terrible improvisation right here now. After a very well-crafted sentence before that, but I rang the bells, and I'm hoping that some bells here as we sort of this improvisation and negotiation, always keeping the other players in mind. That is showmanship right there. Ding ding with the bells. So, to finish up for today, I thought we would try to do what I said that we weren't doing, and that is to come up with some kind of definition here. So after all this exploration of the criteria of play, the 5 ones, I'd like to go against what I said about the impossibility of defining play by ending with a definition. And in light of our preceding exploration, I believe that we can find much of what play is in Stuart Brown's definition from his book called Play: How It Shapes the Brain, Opens the Imagination, and Invigorates the Soul. It's from 2010, and a very good first entrance into understanding play. Yes, very good. So, after all that talk about not pinning down the butterfly, I'm getting out my nails and a hammer. Here's Stuart Brown's definition. Play is an ancient, voluntary, emergent process driven by pleasure that yet strengthens our muscles, instructs our social skills, tempers and deepens our positive emotions, and enables a state of balance that leaves us poised to play some more. I'll read that again without the starts and stops. But as you've already heard here now, you see he's hopefully by this last episode and today's episode, there'll be lots of little pings going off in your head as you hear these words through as he talks about, as he makes this definition. You can see, this is it, this is that. It's like, ancient, voluntary, you have that word, emergent process, driven by the pleasure, fun, all these things. So play is an ancient, voluntary, emergent process driven by pleasure that strengthens our muscles, instructs our social skills, tempers and deepens our positive emotions, and enables a state of balance that leaves us poised to play some more, getting right in there on the infinite games. So here we have a kind of definition which beautifully bites its own tail, like the Ouroboros symbol from the Child Empress's medallion carried by Atreo in Mikael Ende's never-ending story. It points to the fact that play is done for its own sake, that play is an infinite game, for play is firmly and completely a thing in and of itself, not done to acquire some extrinsic benefit, but for the sheer experience of it. Play is a way to do things. It's an approach to whatever one experiences in life, since at the very ground of the human condition as we face the outer and inner geographies is experience. This is the very foundation of it all, and human beings are in a constant state of experience. It is something to be a human. It is something to be a human, It feels like something to be a human. what it's like to be a bat, as Thomas Nagel asked famously, we can't fully know. But we are all participants in the unfolding human experience. And what we are then left with is that the essential function of play is to modulate experience. Human play modulates the human experience. And how do we find our way? Well, I talked about it a little bit in the synopsis when this episode started, about play, or about what our inclinations are as a compass. So let's finish this off with a tiny little bit about play as a compass. Because by squinting, looking metaphorically at the list of the 5 aspects or criteria of play, I see a mirror image of life itself. Not life as a thing that separates plants and animals from rocks, but the kind of activities of living, breathing organisms which makes up their lives. They see the similarities, but they don't see the separating things, but it sees it as one flowing continuum. There is life, but there is also the beautiful and deep questions of how to live it. There's life, but also the beautiful and deep questions of how to live it. Letting oneself be guided by what spark lives inside us towards whatever makes us feel good, by whatever rules we might dream up, in such a way as to connect deeply with our fellow humans and any other species for that matter, like little Teddy. That seems like a good life to me. And we've seen here that when I say this, it's like whatever makes us feel good, but it's whatever makes you feel good whilst being in a relationship so that it is positive for everybody involved. That's the kind of good that we're after here. That's the kind of good where you can't feel good if you're making somebody else feel bad. And if you do, then I don't know, there's something wrong with you. With a little translation and imagination, the criteria for play become a wonderful little list of things to remember. Amidst life's bustle, we find that we have lost our way. If we do, I mean, we all do that from time to time, as Dante said in the beginning of the Divine Comedy. You know, I find myself, it's like midway through life, I find myself lost. And we all have that at the dark night of the soul. We all lose our way. And going through that list, those 5 criteria, it can be a little bit like a pilot getting ready for her next leg of flight. Like each pilot's got to be checking each, like, have we filled petrol? Are the wings attached? Have we got enough drinks for the people in the plane? Maybe they don't have that on their list, might be on someone else's list. But either way, if we find ourselves lost, checking each of those criteria on the list of play criteria against the many aspects of our life, you know, or in the many aspects of, you can see for yourself or your mother or your sister or your friend or your lover or your thinker or your doer or your dreamer, if either aspect of yourself misaligns, if any of those misaligns with any of the criteria of play, you might do well by making life more playful. Take one of those criteria seriously, start adjusting it, and I think that if you do it more playfully, you'll be more happy and more content. You'll be a better player. It's so easy to lose one's way, but play is a pretty good compass for our way through life. Oh, yeah. I'm getting my head is spinning or something like that. So it was a fun episode for me to record. I hope when you listen to it in your own time that it won't be too all over the shop. Sometimes when I do these things, it feels a little bit like I am having a conversation with my writing. Because today I thought it would be a short episode, but this is going to be one of the longer ones. But as always, when it gets to the end of this thing, then I always think, I should tell you guys to help me out somewhat. So if you want to help me out, then why not tell a friend? Tell a friend's friend. Tell a friend's friend that you like this podcast, hey, maybe share something about it on the interweb. Tell your friends on the internet that this is an awesome podcast. I don't know. I'm terrible at these things. I only think of it just towards the end. But I guess when it really comes down to it, I'm happy that you're there. That's enough for me. But if there's more of you, then that should make it even more exciting, because it's about relationships, and those times when some of the most amazing people that I've met from this venture, and also some conversations that I've managed to have with people that I knew from before, but that new avenues have opened up. So anyway, until next time, tell someone you love about this podcast, and take care of yourself and those people that you love that you've just told about this podcast, and I hope to see you and your loved ones along the way.